All right. If you're thinking about starting a new podcast within the next month or two, I think these tips that I'm going to share with you are going to be very important, especially when it helps you with building the habit of launching a podcast episode every week or whatever your frequency may be, and might as well get right into it. Hi there, this is your dear friend Norm, and I'm here to help you with launching your podcast because the more informed that you are about launching your show, the better your podcast will be from the get go. And I think that's the norm. So I've had a few inquiries about launching a podcast from a number of people who are interested in starting their own after they've looked at some of my portfolio, launching a few podcasts here and there. And now that I'm chief of business development at Renegade Radio, which is the podcast company here in Malaysia, I think I'm a little bit qualified to help you with starting your own show. But given the first-hand experiences I've had, some bad, some good, about launching a show in the first place, I thought that I would filter out all the bad stuff and then leave with some good tips and tricks for you if you are a budding podcaster and you want to start your own show. So here are some of the most important tips that I would share with you if you're starting one. The first one is start recording even before you launch the show. I think this is very important because a lot of those who are interested in starting their own show think that you start recording these episodes right when you're meant to record them or release them, rather. But a lot of successful shows actually have a backlog of episodes to launch on D-Day or like launch day. I call it D-Day, I don't know why. But normally, a great show starts off with one, the first episode of the show that introduces what the show will be about. And you have that actually published on the show or the podcast on your favorite hosting platform. My preferred one is Buzzsprout, but we'll talk about that later. Two, up to 3 or 4 already recorded episodes ready to be published on launch day. And the reason why we do it like this is because most of the time you need some extra time even before your chosen date in which you will actually formally launch your show to distribute your shows to all of the distribution platforms. Now, a quick note. You have your podcast, which is the show where you have all the conversations and stuff happening. You have your hosting platform, which is your platform where you will put all the audio files for each of your episodes and have it there as some kind of storage. And that's where all the permissions for this show will be stored so that when you're given a chance to distribute it to distribution platforms will be done, they hold the permissions. So all you have to do is share what is called an RSS feed, plop it into each and every distribution platform, and there you are set. And the last one is the distribution platform. Places like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, etc. These are distribution platforms, not hosting platforms. So you do not find the audio file in Apple Podcasts. You will find the way for you to listen to the audio file via Apple Podcasts, because that is where the distribution for this show from this hosting platform will happen for everyone using Apple devices, for example. And on the other hand, if you're a Spotify user, you go to Spotify to listen to your favorite podcast. These are distribution platforms that are different from hosting platforms. Now, what's important about this is that when you have your episode 1 out, published for the first time, you will get your RSS feed, which is basically the feed in which this happens. You need that feed to be public and accessible so that you can start registering for each of these distribution platforms. You know, it would really suck if your podcast is all ready and then on launch day, that's when you register for Apple Podcasts. And then it takes 5 days to 3 weeks even to launch your show. And that's going to ruin your strategy because you have the show and, 45% of people can't listen to it because it's not accessible on Apple Podcasts, for example. So you want these shows to be available in these platforms on launch day. As soon as they are registered and accepted, then the automation happens. A lot of the episodes will be ready. A lot of the, updates and changes, etc., will be done through the hosting platform. And then the feed will be like, hey, there's some changes or there's a new episode. I will just push that out to all the platforms. So you want that primed and ready. So you have the episode 1 out. On launch day, that's when you can formally tell people, hey, I got a new episode out, or hey, I have a new podcast. Boom, 4 episodes with 1 intro episode and 3 full episodes. The next thing is knowing the rationale behind that. Another reason why that you have these 3 episodes that are backlogged and recorded and ready, it takes a few episodes for a listener to accept whether or not they should subscribe to this episode. Now, from first-hand experience, I've noticed that a lot of episodes, or a lot of listeners rather, they would go in for one episode and they would go out, right? There are a few notable examples and cases where a lot of people would just leave the episode after 2 minutes, after 3 minutes, after 5. And sometimes they would listen to the whole episode, but that doesn't mean that they will subscribe. You need a number of available full episodes for people to be given the chance to think, should I subscribe? Or, am I willing enough to commit to this show so that I will subscribe and allow the show to be part of my routine? Remember, we are podcasters, but that means that we can't just impose our show onto other people's routines, right? You can't force someone to change the way that they commute just so they can listen to your show as it's published in a different manner. They will have a routine and they will fit your show around their routine. That is why we have passive listening behaviors. And there's a difference there between active and passive listening behaviors, which I will talk about in another video for sure. So you have your first episode, you have your RSS feed, then you have your 3 episodes, and then you have the launch of a podcast. That's fantastic. But what if you don't even have any of that, right? What are some of the things that you should be mindful of before you start or launch a show, before you can continue said show? That is why it is important to note, and here's another tip, to recognize and remember the processes behind creating each and every episode. Do you have templates to allow you to streamline, say, the interview for a podcast episode? Do you have a template for your narratives? If you're doing, say, a fictional narrative or a non-fiction narrative, do you have templates that would actually record the beats in which different parts would transition in, would transition out, would change from one scene to the other? What will you do then? What are your favorite SOPs, your principles behind transitioning from one part to another? Do you have a checklist for preparing for researching a guest? Do you have a set of fundamental resources for interviewing? Do you have best practices for your hosting? And more. Checklists, processes, and SOPs, if they are written and ready before you start and launch the show, is perfectly fine if you're still wondering about it before you're doing, your first 4 episodes. And we're going to be, like, for me as a podcast consultant, I will always talk about the first 4. This is going to be a term you're going to hear a lot, actually. If you're still wondering about your processes within the first 4, that's perfectly fine. But by the time that you're launching, try to make as many of these processes streamlined and well documented as possible, because you don't want to spend a lot of your time wondering, what question should I be asking the guy? Or like, how do I edit this episode or anything like that? No, you want to get a lot of these processes done and out of the way so that all you have to do is just refer to them and be like, this episode needs the following, right? 3 audiograms, 2 quote images, maybe 1 video post to Twitter, post to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. Checklists are your best friend when you're doing a podcast. If you have a lot of that done, then I highly suggest that you stick to those, because those are going to be your lifeline in saving time, because podcasting is a very time-consuming medium. I will definitely put a link in the description to this video, to the not show notes. I don't know why I did. When you're doing podcasting for so long, you just call everything show notes. In the description right below for a list of example templates that I will be creating for everybody here, so that you can just start off from these processes and then customize them to your own context. Having templates that are fit to your show are the best. I'm just here to give you a head start. Another thing to note here is the timeline, right? For when you're going to launch your show. I did mention in the very beginning, 30 days. That's around the time that you can record 3 to 4 episodes and have all these things created, the feed and the publishing and the registering for all of these already done, so that you have 1 month away from launch day for you to have everything out. So don't force everything to be done in 1 week. Don't think that you can launch a high quality show within 2 days, because, well, even if you can, and you're gonna tell me that'd be pretty sick, you have to wait for the distribution platforms to be finished. You have to wait for the hosting platform descriptions to be done, right? You have to wait for the show notes to be done for each and every episode. And show notes is going to be a really big one that I'll cover in another video. All of this takes time, which means that you can't try to force a podcast to be done within, say, a week. You'd have to give it in timelines of months or quarters where you have all of these episodes set and ready. But of course, in the beginning, it's crunch time because you want to have a strong launch or a strong intro to your episode with all these episodes ready for people to listen to and for people to decide whether they want to subscribe and listen to. Now, we didn't actually cover the contents of the podcast itself because that's very dependent on the individual, on yourself, the podcaster, but I will cover that in another video where we talk about designing the show that you have in your head and what are the things that you should be contemplating or thinking about if you want to make it not only unique to your voice, but also allow it to be flexible and organic enough that it can cater for different podcast models, like where's the pre-roll and the mid-roll, and what are the different transitions that you should consider, and the different audio IDs, the introduction and the outro. How long should an introduction be, right? Normally, I would always go for 30 seconds to 1 minute of the intro, including the music, because people like to go straight into the action. By the time that you want to get right into the action, a lot of people will be skipping these 30-second, 1 minute intros by just slapping on the next part, the next 30 seconds button on their favorite podcast app. Either did you have a high quality intro and allow them to dive them right into the action, or have it so that it's so standardized that it's easy for them to actually continue that behavior of skipping so that they can just click on it and then just be like, oh, I know that around for this show, 1 minute 30 is around when the actual episode starts. I'm just going to tap it, right? Our goal as podcasters is to make it very easy for listeners to go right into the meat of the sandwich, right? Like the main section of the episode. Sometimes people would just have an intro that just lasts 3 seconds and then they'll just say, oh, this is the show. Welcome. Boom, right into the episode. Others would have a long intro and the premise of the intro, or the premise of the episode rather, and the show, and an introduction of the guest, and then you have the main conversation. That's perfectly fine because these formats cater to that. They require such elements to be included in the beginning of the episode. So for you, some advice would be, if you're starting a show, think of your own podcast behaviors. How long would you want the intro to be? Do you skip it a lot? Maybe should you consider having it shorter? Do you have a podcast that requires conversations, right? An interview or a conversational podcast? And that topic, conversational podcast, is also another video I'll do another time, where you want to have an intro of the guest. You want to have the main points. You want to have a summary right in the beginning. You want to have a hook that will captivate the listener to listen to the rest of the hour show, for example, in the first 5 seconds, right? Like it's a bit like clickbait. What heading would compel you to read the rest of this article? The podcast version is what hook of the conversation will compel you to listen to the rest of the episode, because it's going to be, say, 1 hour or 30 minutes or however long it takes. You want to make that amazing. You want to make that captivating. You want to make that sexy, right? And last but not least, we have the launch, we have the SOPs, the processes, the checklists, etc. And I'll expand on those templates another time. We have the considerations for the listener, and we have the backlog right in the beginning, because we are focusing at the moment on starting the podcast, not really continuing it. That's a whole set of other tips and tricks that will be covered another time. The last thing you need is a support system. Right? We have coaches, consultants, etc., but also other podcasters who are willing to share their knowledge on launching their show. And that's why I like Buzzsprout, because Buzzsprout is not only a hosting platform that can help you with launching your show, they have an amazing network of content, like videos. Like their YouTube channel is insane. Like I love their stuff. And they also have a great support system, like a support team who are always willing to help you with, launching and continuing a podcast if you're looking for help there. And they have their Facebook group as well for podcasters who are with Buzzsprout or they have their shows hosted on Buzzsprout. I love what they're doing, and that's why I love being with them. Most of the time, if I have things that I'm missing in terms of like podcast knowledge, I always refer to Buzzsprout. The extent of which they cover everything podcasting related is great. So, much props to them. So if you're interested in starting your show and hosting it, etc., I highly recommend Buzzsprout as a hosting platform. You can, check out the link in the description right below. It's a link that will also help me as well at no additional cost to you. I also just love helping them out for real. And if you are in need of some kind of consulting or coaching with your podcast, etc., or if you just have an extra question that you think I should cover, you can just email me or another link in the description right below, and I can help out with that. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching this. Like, I really want to make sure that your podcast launches well. It can launch, but it can launch even better. You never know. Some of these things that I've mentioned in the video may help you a lot so that you can worry less or be less anxious about whether or not you're doing the right thing. And trust me, the fact that you're doing multiple episodes recorded and ready and primed for everyone to listen to at launch day, you're doing way better than a lot of other podcasters. So you're doing very well, and I'm here to help you out with that. This is Norm. Thank you for watching this, and I will see you in another video.